Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Frank Lusko, Vice President of Services Sales for Red River, and welcome to our Managed Cybersecurity and Compliance webinar. Sitting across from me is a partner and friend, Greg Chevalier, who's a Senior Vice President at ABACODE.
Yeah, thanks, Frank. Excited to be here today. And just a brief on ABACODE, and I'll let Frank touch on Red River. So we're a Tampa, Florida-based organization dealing with cybersecurity and compliance. We've created an interesting new market category, and in that establishing very strategic partnerships with managed service providers and solution integrators. So really excited about the long-term relationship that we've had with Red River, and looking forward to today's session.
Yeah, definitely. And for those of you that don't know, Red River, among other things, is a managed services provider. Okay, we currently support well over 200 accounts, nationally and across all of the expected service towers. So think of us in terms of, the workforce or the end user support. Think of us for network and data center support, collaboration, security, and working with unified communication systems and that sort. So, Greg, it's been great working with you.
Yeah,
it really has. We've been working together now for a number of years in developing this solution. You and I have kind of run point on this thing for a while, so we've been in the weeds and digging through it. And I'd like the audience to to really know what this 2 years has been like.
Yeah.
It's not all been go to market, right? I mean, there's been a lot of internal work that went into this and developing our Better Together partnership.
Yeah, like we've said, Frank, this partnership is really at the development level, and what's really important for our client base in doing that is it takes a lot of the friction off of the client in having to manage multiple partners and multiple disciplines in a combined cybersecurity compliance strategy, along with the MSP services for remediation on the back end. And that's a critical factor in success, be it CMMC or other initiatives, to have all of those disciplines stitched together. And so, as Frank referenced, that's really what we've done at the development level for a couple of years now.
Yeah, it's been great. I mean, there's two distinct, businesses here, an MSP and an MSSP, and we understand that at Red River, and we've developed, a lot of the core technology support services and processes to help, to deliver, or fill, I should say, some service delivery gaps that many organizations have. And as part of our relationship together, Greg's team at ABACODE is, managing those security aspects of the relationship, managing the SIM. They have their SOC, the 2 locations throughout the country, and then we're there to kind of pick up that remediation, and make sure those holes are plugged, those patches are applied, and we're executing against SLAs to deliver that outcome for the customer. So. Speaking of outcomes and business value, Greg, maybe we should start by talking a little bit about, we want to talk about CMMC in general, what segments it affects, and what business value this brings to these organizations, right?
Yeah, it's really, really important, in my opinion, that we as professionals, we approach cybersecurity and compliance from the perspective, this is not a fear factor conversation. This is a conversation about enhancing business value for our customers, bringing the 2 critical disciplines together on the cybersecurity compliance side and the managed service provider side in order to increase our clients' business value. Because compliance, in our opinion now, is really driven as a condition of doing business. So no longer do you have to just be a healthcare provider or PCI with retail or CMMC alone. It's really a condition of doing business. And that's driven by supply chain impact of being compliant and secure and having a good remediation strategy on the back end. And it's driven by a number of other events. So you, as a perhaps manufacturer in the DoD, looking at a growth strategy, maybe taking on a capital infusion event, and now those capital sources are asking, what are you doing to protect the data to stay in business from a cybersecurity and compliance perspective so that our investment is protected. So it's really become that condition of doing business, merger and acquisition. We're seeing a lot of due diligence from the cybersecurity compromise perspective in an M&A transaction. And then when it comes to CMMC, we've been talking about this. We've had a lot of great success with clients in motion right now. And when we, Red River and ABACODE, approached those clients, there was a lot of confusion about a year ago relative to CMMC 1.0. And then in November of 2021, CMMC 2.0 came out. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But at the end of the day, here's what we've seen. And it's consistent with all of the clients that Red River and ABACODE supports. It's now become a condition of doing business with the prime. So the primes are the ones that are really pushing down the initiative and the timing, regardless of what's happening with the DoD and their timing of 2.0, perhaps being 2023 or 2024. We are consistently seeing our clients being asked by their primes to get to a CMMC 2.0 level sooner than later. And it's become a condition of doing business, and there's contract revenue at risk. So that's what we talk about when we talk about compliance and security, really enhancing your enterprise and your business value as you go forward.
Well, okay, let's talk a little bit maybe about what CMMC is.
Yeah.
Right?
So in its simplest form, CMMC, the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification process, is in place, driven by the Department of Defense for those that do business with the Department of Defense and access data. And that data is identified as federal contract information, or FCI, or controlled unclassified information, or CUI. So in its simplest form, the DoD, rightfully so, is putting this measure of compliance in place to protect Department of Defense data at the prime level and at the subcontractor level. And so based on the type of either CUI or FCI data that you handle, CMMC 2.0 has gone from 5 different levels now down to 3 different levels. And depending on that CUI level type that you handle really drives whether you're at a level 3, a level 2, or level 1. And really, at the end of the day, the critical differentiator there, Frank, is whether there's a third-party certified assessor organization that has to assess and attest to your certification, and that's at level 3, or whether you can do self-assessment or non-certifying third parties at the level 2. And so at the end of the day, that's the real separation between level 3, level 2, and level 1. And so then the inevitable question on the next slide is, how do you determine what level you're at of CUI and whether you fall into level 3, 2, or 1 on the CMMC 2.0?
Right.
So that's all driven by your DFARS contract, which would have specifics in the contract of what DFARS rating that you're at. And then from there, it defines the level of CUI data. Now, one of the value props with Red River and ABACODE is we are often asked by clients and prospects to help sort through that noise and confusion to really understand what level they need to get to, 1, 2, or 3, and what period in time based on what's being requested of them, primarily from the primes now today.
So that's like a security framework type assessment that's included in the program?
And so the levels 3, 2, and 1 are all driven now off the NIST 800-171 standard. And that standard has 110 controls. And as we dig into today, we'll show you how we help you assess your current posture against those controls and then put a remediation plan in place that gives you the roadmap of getting to that level of 800-171.
There you go.
So, like Frank said, the value in the partnership is at the development level, and what ABACODE is bringing to the table is a unique market position in that we have literally created a new market category known as MCCP, or Managed Cybersecurity Compliance Provider, and that's driven from two different market segments, MSSP, or Managed Security Service Provider, and the GRC market, which was traditional compliance. And what we found in our clients is the conversations were going like this.
Okay.
So the business side of the house was talking about compliance, the technical side of the house talking about cybersecurity, and those conversations went like that. So we saw an opportunity to put those conversations together through ABACODE with one holistic program and deliver that compliance and cybersecurity to our clients. Now, the intriguing thing is what we found is there was still a very critical gap that needed to be filled on the back end of this, and that's the remediation effort.
That's right.
And so that's why it's so important in this partnership here of having ABACODE focus on the cybersecurity and compliance, and then Red River pick up on the remediation, because here's what you don't want. What you don't want is ABACODE finding a critical event at 2 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday and nobody being able to step in and pick up the remediation. So that's why, we talk about this better together story, that the relationship is so powerful with ABACODE delivering that entire cybersecurity and compliance program, and then Red River picking up on the back end for remediation and all things MSP.
Right on.
And so this really is a jointly developed plan to success, but it just kind of gives you the guidelines of what the critical steps are that we break down between both ABACODE and Red River in getting you moved into a CMMC 2.0 compliance position as quickly as possible and as predictably as possible. So like Frank said, at the development level, we've really studied the critical steps, the sequences of those steps, and the frequency by which you have to carry them out to get to that CMMC 2.0 or NIST 800-171 status.
Yeah, and that's why the beauty of this too is it's a subscription-based model, right? This is not a one-time effort, right? This is a constant monitoring and management of your cybersecurity framework, right? I mean, you just have to do this on a consistent basis.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
And so the bad news to that is this doesn't end at day 180. And at day 180 is really where the heavy lift picks up, like Frank said, on the ongoing life cycle of not only getting to CMMC 2.0, but then maintaining that.
Right.
And again, the value in this relationship is we take that entire heavy lift off the shoulders of our clients. We predictably know what needs to be done, when it needs to be done, the frequency and the cadence. And so in this subscription model, on the back end of the first 180 days, Red River and ABACODE are doing things on behalf of each other and the client at a frequency and a cadence that we know is required to stay in that CMMC 2.0 status.
That's right. Consistent cadence around vulnerability scanning, pen testing, right, and ongoing remediation of these things. So through our patching services, things like that, we're applying patches to desktop endpoints, to server environments, to storage arrays, to network devices, iOS updates. That's part of our program, and it's included in the model. So you can guarantee that we're staying on top of these things.
And those are a couple of great reference points. So for example, vulnerability scanning. So as we're running the compliance program on your behalf, and we know, like Frank said, there's a cadence to running vulnerability scans on a quarterly basis, and we're doing the compliance management. If we find patching issues in a vulnerability scan, call it, and you'll see this in a couple slides, your speed dial or dashboard for compliance on vulnerability scanning, it's going to go from a green to a red.
Yeah.
And it goes from a green to a red because you're out of compliance on your patch management. So that becomes a very clean handoff from ABACODE to Red River. Red River knows what has to be done from a patch management perspective. And then once they trigger an event back to ABACODE on the compliance side, that says patching is complete. We validate, verify that, and your speed dial goes back to full green on vulnerability scanning.
Exactly. And the fact that we work together has a lot of advantages, but there's also an advantage of being independent too, in a sense, right? I mean, we're not running scans on our own environment, right?
Right.
Or
pen
test.
So if Red River tells ABACODE on the compliance side that patch management's been complete, we're going to ask for the artifacts on that, because that's a part of compliance. And we manage all of that within our compliance portal. And then that documentation is there to substantiate the check and balance.
That's right. That
the remediation partner did what they were supposed to based on what the security and compliance partner found. And the same holds true on both sides. So great point that, you've got that check and balance in place between the two, but it is still at that development level.
Yep.
And so what's really important here is in your path to success in CMMC 2.0 is we predictably know what the controls are, the control families, and the disciplines that are required, the frequency and cadence for such on an ongoing. So it really becomes a turnkey subscription program. I can't tell you how many customers that we've talked to that said, we hired a firm, they said, we'll get you CMMC 2.0 in 90 days, and then our job is done and we're out of here. And 6 months later, that firm is calling ABACODE and Red River because none of the continuous disciplines have been enacted. They've got revenue risk because Lockheed or Northrop or Raytheon is coming down and saying, we need substantiation that you're continuing your CMMC 2.0 program. They can't provide the substantiation, and the whole thing in the investment falls apart. And that's what's really critical on this ongoing program.
And usually it's a fire drill to get things back on track.
Right? Absolutely.
I mean, we've been on the other end of that as an MSP when other MSSPs or other consulting firms have come in, and have provided the assessments and hand you a document this thick. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
to figure out what's going on, right? So we've been on the other end of that. And in this arrangement that we have, okay, and again, it goes deep. I'm talking, true shared responsibility model that includes the customer and both MSP and MSSP down to RACI level type activities, like who's responsible for what and who's supposed to take action for what, and who's accountable for those things.
And there's a couple of really critical path items that are on this slide here. In particular, the continuous monitoring from a 24/7, 365 security operation perspective. That's one of the more critical controls that we call kind of the big hit cybersecurity control that most of our clients, they can't understand how to implement a SIM, how to select a SIM, let alone have the staff and the analysts to truly put, which we do, eyes on glass, 24/7, 365, and then truly have a clean handoff for remediation in that 24/7, 365. I had a client one time say, well, we really don't need it the 24/7, 365 because most of the hacking happens during daytime hours, right? And so, it's really critical to understand that continuous monitoring as a big heavy lift here as well, delivered as part of the program. And then tying that together from the compliance perspective, everything we do together, we drive through a dashboard so that the important thing for you is that you can have your finger on the pulse of your program at any point in time in the life cycle. So if you're asked by your prime to substantiate where you are in your journey for CMMC 2.0, we can immediately produce those reports. If you're asked by your prime, what are you doing with remediation, patching, and system upgrades, we can produce those reports. You've got a vendor tag to it. It's Red River, and we're doing that entire management for you. So there's no question or confusion as to where you are in the life cycle, and all of that's managed by the dashboard. And then the interesting thing about that is as we are doing remediation in the go forward after the initial assessment, we can actually push tasks out through the portal in the platform to the appropriate resource to perform the action to satisfy that particular control.
Yeah.
And so that's again where the relationship kicks in.
Sure, and there's a lot of policy and process and things like that that are built into this. Do you assist and help the customer in that area too? And I guess this becomes a repository as well for all that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the critical path disciplines are the framework assessment up front. From there, developing the roadmap and remediation plan, which is going to have a number of different resource pools involved in the remediation plan. ABACODE on some, Red River on some, maybe the client on some. The critical path of the policy procedure development, which is going to have policy from a security perspective as well as a MSP remediation perspective. So the interaction with Red River as we develop out those policies, and then all the other critical disciplines as shown on the prior chart, the annual pen testing, the vulnerability scanning, security awareness, education, training, et cetera. Right. Yeah, all part of the program managed by the dashboard. And so again, the critical function that we're delivering and what really substantiates the power of the relationship between ABACODE and Red River is that 24/7 continuous security operations center function. And Frank alluded to the fact that we actually operate 2 security operations centers for best practice redundancy. By the way, on that point, both companies, as we say, we drink our own champagne.
Yeah.
So we're both at substantial levels of certifications ourselves internally. I know Red River's been through CMMC and a number of others. At ABACODE, we have our SOC Type 2 attestation. We have our NIST 800-171, ISO 27000. There's a plethora of compliance strategies that we've gone through ourselves.
Oh, absolutely. We're making a lot of investments in that area. Of course, we are SOC as well, but our SOC Type 2. But looking at the number of these technologies themselves too, because they play a role, obviously, kind of in the overall solution. And we've made incredible investments in Microsoft and developing our skill sets there, our credentials around Azure, AWS, GCP, and of course, more of your traditional data center type solutions, your VMware, Hyper-V, and the whole stack of OEM products that you think you can imagine between Cisco and Dell and the likes.
Yeah, and what's really important about that is this encompasses, in most cases, all of the systems that are critical within your CUI boundary. So there's nothing that can be left out of scope when it comes to applications or systems that touch your CUI data. So that's your CUI boundary. And then we're delivering that 24/7 SOC service with continuous monitoring and through the assistance of Red River, helping to identify the ability to get those log sources, which is important, into our SIM platform. Now, on that note as well, we're both doing the heavy lift of the entire platform. So you're not having to buy pieces and parts or technologies in order for us to manage. We're bringing all of that in the platforms required, the compliance dashboard portal, the SIM technology, the security awareness training platforms, all of that we're bringing under scope in our subscription model.
Yeah. And if you come to the table with some next gen, antivirus solutions or anti-malware solutions, chances are we're going to be able to ingest that information and manage those those EDR solutions as well. So just name it, Carbon Black, Windows Defender, the whole lot. We're very capable and have a lot of flexibility and be able to support those solutions as well.
Yeah. And it is, again, it's critically important, whether it's us or another, it's critically important to really understand your totality of your scope on your CUI boundary. We've got a lot of clients that miss that. They may have a business process that's moving CUI data into what they believe to be a non-mission critical application or system, but that is still under your CUI boundary definition, regardless of whether it's a mission critical system or not. And it could be something as benign as taking CUI data from a proposal and contract system and moving it through email for an executive level review. Well, that now puts that entire O365 environment under your CUI boundary. So you got to be real careful on making sure that you have your full scope of systems that are in that boundary and then monitoring them as well. And yeah,
love this slide.
Yeah. We're both so excited. I'm not sure who's going to talk about it, but again, now, we've talked a lot about, how Red River and ABACODE can assist here, but I'll just put this in perspective of regardless of the methodology you choose or partner with an ABACODE and Red River, this is such a critical aspect to your success because, like I said, what you don't want to have is a false sense of security running any level of security operations center and not having a recipient on the back end to immediately contain and or isolate a threat. So for example, you have a brute force attack on an Active Directory at 2 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday with escalating privilege access. You do not want a solution in place that provides automated notification and you find out about that at 9 a.m. on Monday, because two things. Number one, you're probably already under ransomware by that point. And number two, your business impact is going to be significant. And so this is, this is the power of the story together here, because we're tightly knit, we're stitched together at the development level. We've worked on this from a shared service model for countless hours in investment over the last couple of years.
We really have. I mean, from pre-sales engagements, go-to-markets, to the professional services delivery, and implementation or deployment of these solutions, because that's important, onboarding of these into the managed services environment, and then having your core teams ready to understand how to manage the workflow and the handoffs, escalation teams in place for remediation. All of that has been worked out down to the RACI level, and this is information we'll provide any of our customers, as part of the process, so they have a clear understanding and expectation of how this Better Together partnership works. I wanted to add one little note. This is probably a room for another webinar, but just to show you kind of our investment at Red River in our CMMC programs. Looking at the NOC on this slide, we're doing things there to make that NOC entirely CMMC compliant. So meaning personnel working on that NOC, tooling of that NOC. So think ServiceNow that's FedRAMP ready. Think Kaseya that's CMMC compliant for desktop and server management. Think Science Logic, for network management tools, and all that can withstand the scrutiny of audits. CMMC audits. So that's coming soon. To further enhance our CMMC capabilities. And like I said, there's probably a webinar in our future just to talk about that.
Yeah. And so,
that's a little bit.
This kind of wraps up the heart of this, but we've had, some questions that came in advance. One was, what do we do to just get our arms around this and get started, regardless of whether we bring in a Red River and ABACODE. Number one, I would encourage begin understanding what the business risk is from a revenue perspective and what primes you're doing business with and what the timing of those opportunities and contracts are, and get out ahead of the game. You don't want to get caught flat-footed on a contract renewal opportunity by which CMMC 2.0 is a hard requirement for you to substantiate and show the prime. And now you're, 3 months out from contract renewal, or you're 2 weeks out, or you're, under 6 months out. And we've had a couple of those instances, clients in panic mode. They've got a contract renewal opportunity and it's tied to condition of CMMC.
Yeah, and then we talked a lot about this, Greg, in the framework of CMMC as well as, the defense industrial base sector, right? But
Yeah.
I mean, that's not the only industry that can benefit from
Yeah.
this type of program, right?
Yeah, it's like I said, we look at it as it's become a condition of doing business. And by the way, it's become a competitive advantage. I will tell you, we have a client that we brought through CMMC in 2021 from spring to fall. And we literally had that client call us and say that they have seen an uptick in opportunity with their prime in excess of 30%, 30%, as a result of being one of few in their market segment for that prime that achieved CMMC 2.0 by that time.
Cool.
So it becomes, like we said, a condition of doing business, but it also becomes a competitive advantage, and it adds to the overall enterprise value of the company.
Great. That's wonderful. Do we have any questions that came online that we can answer?
Yeah, first one is, how do I determine what level of CMMC I need?
So back to the CMMC 2.0, that has truncated from 5 levels down to 3. And so within your agreement with the prime, it's the DFARS identification, and then it will explicitly state in that agreement, or you go to the prime based on the initiative as to what type of CUI data you're handling, which puts you into either that level 3, the level 2, or just with the federal contract information, it puts you into that level 1.
Yeah.
So that's a dialogue that you should have with your contracting officers and your primes to understand what the expectation is.
And if there's still some uncertainty there, we can certainly help. Give us a call, send us an email. We'll take some time and spend a few minutes with you talking about that.
Yeah, what you don't want to do is make a bad assumption.
Yeah.
So you don't want to assume that you're at level 1 and you have a contract that requires level 2, and you probably don't want to overshoot as well and assume you just have to get to level 3, which is a little bit of a heavier lift from the certification perspective, by which you could have implemented a level 2.
Next question is, do I need to change my existing email and file sharing to become CMMC compliant, or what do you recommend there?
I
change out systems, or?
Yeah, probably not. Okay,
Right.
Probably not. I would, these technologies are mapped to the various controls, and there's certainly are technologies out there that fit the model. I think that we could do an analysis of those, and make sure we have the right endpoint protection pieces in place. If your file sharing is inside of SharePoint, chances are we're going to be good there, or email is in, Office 365, chances are we're going to be good there. So for the most part, I don't think we've had to come in and actually have to replace any of the technologies up to this point.
Yeah, but
maybe have to add a few and enhance a few, but not have to rip and replace.
What does become important, though, is to understand the scope and the boundary of CUI data coming into the file share or through the email system. And one of the things that we often encourage is to try and reduce that scope as much as possible of your CUI boundary, because that provides a much smaller attack surface that you're at risk.
Consolidation. If you've got Dropbox out there and you've got other different types of file share solutions, getting that consolidated would be much better for control, certainly.
Yep.
The next one is, why are so many eyes looking at CMMC, meaning departments, different companies, and different job titles?
So if I understand the question, why are so many eyes looking at CMMC? First off, the main set of eyes is the Department of Defense. And it's because of the data that's at risk to the U.S. government, Department of Defense, and agencies that, if in the hands of bad actors, could be a significant compromise to our intelligence. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect, if I read it or understand it correctly, is why are so many companies looking at CMMC? There's a vast number. It's in the near 300,000 subcontractors that are delivering services to the DoD. So there are a lot of eyes on this because we've got to make sure that that intelligence data is not compromised, regardless of whether you're a boutique manufacturer or a significant engineering firm. If you're touching that CUI data, it's critically important that the right eyes are on it.
Yeah.
And then the last question is, are there certain industry segments that you're seeing more interested in CMMC than others?
Yeah, we've seen manufacturing
Mhm.
kind of bubble to the top. Manufacturing is kind of interesting because there's an added component there with OT, which is your operational technology as compared to just your IT. So there's another level of risk that's introduced with the OT systems.
Yeah.
And so that needs to come under scope as well. But manufacturing seems to bubble up to the top for CMMC engineering firms that are providing engineering services, and then other, I'd say, professional services.
Professional services, we've seen it insurance,
Yep.
right? We've seen it in consulting services. Yeah, we've seen it right across the board. Yeah, but I would agree. Manufacturing seems to be one that that we're seeing the most activity in right now. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate your participation in our event today. I hope that you found this to be a beneficial use of your time this afternoon. We certainly did, and we're very happy to be able to deliver this for you today. Again, my name is Frank Lusko, Red River. I'm the Vice President of Managed Services Sales. Please feel free to reach out to myself or Greg Chevalier here at ABACODE, and we'd be happy to set up some time with you to discuss, your situation there with as it relates to CMMC compliance.
Excellent. Thanks. And thanks for Red River on hosting. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.